Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Oh, we gotta fix our feedback issues. Put your volume all the way up. We're good. Okay, I think we've got it now. Welcome, everyone. This is a town hall for student services and special education. We're really glad that you joined tonight. I'm Executive Director Carol Potter, and I will be doing the presentation tonight. I also have in the room with me our Director of Special Education, Beth Watkins, who will be presenting the PowerPoint to you. And I have the Director of Student Services, Shannon Avenson, who will be our moderator for tonight. And she will be looking through the chat to see if there are questions that are pertaining to the slides that we will be talking about. You can go ahead, Beth. Thank you. So for the meeting tonight, just so we all are functioning under the same protocols, if you would keep your microphone muted, what you heard, that feedback, what you heard at the beginning was us not having our microphones muted. So if you would keep your microphone muted, and then if you have any questions for us as we go through, if you would write your questions using the chat feature, because this will be monitored. Like I said, Shannon will be monitoring that for us, and we will make sure that we get all of your questions answered as we can. I think someone is on with us. And then expect that there may be questions for which we do not have answers yet. We're still in the planning phases. And so we just really appreciate your patience as we explore. And you might bring up things that we hadn't thought about yet. So we really appreciate that too. And then we have to end promptly at 6 p.m. because there's another town hall following this one. Our topics for tonight are going to be, we're going to talk about our learning models for the fall. And I'm just going to ask anybody who's on right now, whether you're on the phone or on your computer, if you would just please mute your microphone so make sure everybody can hear. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. All right, so our session topics for tonight, we're going to talk about our learning models for the fall. We're going to talk about what social opportunities your students have, and then how our service is determined, how our service is provided, and we're going to talk a little bit about staffing, and then our personal protective equipment. So most of these things we've had many questions around, and that's how we chose our topics for tonight. Okay, our first model that we want to talk about is the hybrid model. So all students have two choices in which to participate this fall. And the first one is the hybrid model. I'm sure you have heard about this already. K2 students are attending Monday through Thursday in person. And then Friday will be a flex learning day, a what I need day. And then students in grades 3 and older will attend in person 2 days per week and 3 days virtually. So all students have flex days on Fridays with learning at home. And so if you are in that hybrid model in grades 3 or older, you will have 2 in person, 2 hybrid, and then Friday is a flex day in which their students are getting very specific needs met virtually. And then the other option, the other option is the Distance Learning Academy. And you have received surveys on the Distance Learning Academy. And if you enrolled in the Distance Learning Academy, that's going to be its own school within itself. So there will be teachers in every content area. There will be special education teachers. There'll be a special education supervisor, all connected to that Distance Learning Academy. We're asking that families sign up for the Distance Learning Academy for 1 full year, a commitment, so that we can solidify our staffing for that academy. We will look at if there are unique circumstances. We will evaluate at trimester time to see if it's really the best learning model for your student at that time. All right, if you need any information on the hybrid model schedules and instruction, those are going to be in any upcoming, if there's elementary town hall meetings and there's secondary town hall meetings, and all of those have been posted on the district website. For example, I know right now at the very same time we're meeting, there's an elementary one. But the elementary town hall will also be offered next week. And so be sure to visit the website to make sure that you're getting all the information that you're looking for. Thank you. Okay, elementary. So in that hybrid model where students are on site for 2 days, virtually for 3 days, you're going to be completing in the 2 days that you're in person, the students are completing 2 literacy and 2 math whole group lessons per day. And so they're condensing all of the information to make sure that kids are not falling behind and having less information given to them than as if they were in person. And so there's going to be time you're going to need to allocate time at home to process that learning, because they are going to be having, like I said, 2 lessons happening in 1 day for both literacy and math. The lessons will be interactive and collaborative, and will all be done safely and are prioritized so that our lessons can be synchronous if possible. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, synchronous and asynchronous.
Carol, we do have one question.
Okay.
Do we know when the recorded town hall will be available and posted online?
Yes, the recorded town hall will be posted online as soon as we are finished. Okay, so what social opportunities will my student have? And so the elementary students will participate in daily morning meetings, which is much like they do pre-COVID. The schools would have a morning meeting in which all the kids may do a social emotional learning goal, may do some kind of team building, some connection, creating a sense of belonging to that classroom that they are in. And then secondary students will participate in a daily advisory. And so much like the elementary, it won't be as intensive in that advisory. It's a shorter period of time, but it's a way to take attendance. It's a way to get to know all students and to have some social communication with friends. On distance learning days, students will participate in activities, and here's that synchronously with in-person classmates. So synchronously means that at the same time, and so I'm online with you, we're in a synchronous meeting, we get to see each other. Asynchronous means I will push out this recording afterwards, and you will be watching that on your own time, and so that's asynchronous. And so secondary students then also have the opportunity to participate in athletics or activities as allowed within the Minnesota Department of Health and the Minnesota State High School League recommendations. And those are also on our website right now. And any student in any model, whether you are in the distance learning model or you are in the hybrid model, can participate in activities and athletics.
Carol, we have a question in the chat box.
Okay.
It says, and what about students or kids who struggled with attending when information was provided on a device?
Mm-hmm. And so when information is provided, if we're talking specifically about the distance learning model, in the distance learning model, they are developing times in which it would be synchronous times. And so they will not be covering as much information have as many classes in a day. The classes are going to be block classes, and the opportunity for students to be focusing on one thing, one item, one content area will be lengthened as compared to having 6 or 7 classes in a day.
Okay, and we have a question, will we have adapted sports?
We will have adapted sports. That is the plan. Adapted sports are a Minnesota High School League event, and so as we move into that, I know when talking with the activities directors, they get new information all the time about what is going to be offered and when it's going to be offered and how to keep kids safe during that. And if you have any questions on activities, I know our 2 activities directors and their assistants that work with them would be happy to answer any questions on that. It is Mr. Dave Langerud at Tech High School, and at Apollo, it's Mr. Peter Hammerlich for activities directors.
And Dave Langerud is on and in the chat as well, and he is saying they are actually working on schedules right now and will be offered after school starts. We have another question in the chat box. How can synchronously be required for students 3 through 5 when they are too young to be home by themselves and parents work? 3rd graders are 8 years old. How can we be expecting them to sign on at a specific time if they are in someone else's care on those home days due to parent work schedule?
So I think that is a challenge that many families are facing, is how do we make that schooling work? I think the opportunity to get on synchronously is extremely important, especially for those social opportunities that we're talking about now. I think that those schedules will have to be worked out with people who they are in their care. Whoever's caring for them are going to have to be able to help support that. I know that that is a significant challenge. It was a significant challenge last spring when that was happening, and unfortunately, that is the world we're living in right now. And I apologize that is what is happening, and I can guarantee you, we're doing the best that we can to make that work and support students in the best way that we can.
Time on days emphasize that as well.
Okay. Okay, how are services determined? And so we have 2 different types of plans that we work with for students with disabilities. So the one on the left of the screen for IEPs, those are individualized plan for each learning model, in-person, hybrid, and distance learning. And so no matter what model we're in, we're going to create an individualized plan for each of the different learning models. And you will be developing that with a case manager who's connected to your student. And so we'll be looking at all of those different pieces. What accommodations and modifications need to be made in each of the models? What are the service minutes that are required or needed to help your student meet their goals? And then every one of the IEPs right now are going to be amended to reflect that. And so you'll see a new look to the IEP. It will be, you'll have a service grid that has 3 different columns on it that will show you exactly what each model will look like. And again, that will be discussed at the IEP team meeting. IEP team meetings, now that we're talking about, will be held in a virtual format. And so a case manager will be reaching out to you, the parent, to connect, and we will use Google Meet just like we are right now for any video conferencing that we're doing, or you may call in. Some of you are calling in tonight, and you may also use that method for an IEP meeting as well. We will need to prioritize changing the IEPs for students that are in the hybrid model first. Students that are in the Distance Learning Academy, those will be second. We're hoping to have all IEPs completed by the time school starts, but we're really going to focus on the hybrid model ones first, because those are the ones that need the most significant changing up front. Where the IEPs where a student was in distance learning in the spring will look similarly, but we will be updating those as well as soon as we can. 504 plans, then on the right side of your screen. So 504 services will also be amended for the 3 different scenarios, and that's determined by the 504 team. So you, in conjunction with a 504 coordinator, most often at your student's school, it is the school counselor. But feel free to call the school to ask who that person is, but most often it's the school counselor. And the 504 coordinator will provide the parent or guardian, you, with an updated 504 plan for the student for this fall. Again, all IEPs and 504 plans will be updated, and so it will represent exactly what's going on for your students' learning in the fall. And if you have any questions regarding a 504 plan, feel free to reach out to that 504 coordinator at each site.
We have a question. I heard that special education students, grades 3 through 5, can attend every day, not Friday. Is that true? And if it is, how is that determined?
Okay, great question. And so service is for all students, and so we have a couple of different things going on. And so our entire district is in a hybrid model. And what that looks like for K2 students is that those K2 students will be coming to school every day, but they will be split in half. So if there's a class of 25 students, so it's 12 students will be in one room and 13 will be in the other room to support. There's still one class, but because of social distancing, those students will be spread out. Kids that are in grades 3 through 5, that is the hybrid model that in which students attend in person 2 days and then would go virtual for the other 3 days. 2 will be instructional. The third day, the Flex Friday, will be a day in which students are case managers are connecting with parents, and students are getting exactly what they need. If they're falling behind, if they have questions, they need to check in with a case manager or a content teacher. Fridays will be the day to do that. Let's see if I answered that question. Okay, Shannon.
And then we have another question about the synchronous learning in grades 3 through 5. If synchronous learning was going to be required for grades 3 through 5, why were those students not put into in-person classes? I believe I'm reading that correctly. So why are grades, if I'm interpreting that correctly, why would grades 3 through 5 not be in-person versus hybrid?
And so again, so the plan is for grades 3 through 5, there's a synchronous component to every day that the student is in front of the teacher. And then there's also a synchronous component on the days that it is virtually as well. And so why can't they come every day? If it is determined by your student's IEP team that your student needs to come every day for 4 days, that is a determination that's going to be made by the team. And so the question is really, what kinds of accommodations or modifications and what kinds of services does a student need in order to meet their goals and objectives? And so some kids can receive their services in 2 days, some might be 4 days, some might be in the Distance Learning Academy completely. And so once your IEP team meets to determine that, you'll have a better feel for what needs your student has.
How will IEPs be distributed to teachers so that we ensure teachers are aware of the accommodations?
Oh, another great question. And so your case manager is the person who writes the IEP. And so they are responsible for giving that information to the content teachers. And we have something set up in our student plan system. That's a system we write IEPs in. And we can send out the accommodations and modifications through that system so that our content teachers have all of that information. And so if it is not an in-person communication, it'll be a communication through the technology to make sure that teachers are aware.
Carol, has the criteria for splitting hybrid students been established?
It has been established, actually. And so to split hybrid students, it's going to be alphabetical. And so students A through K and L through Z, last names, we are trying to split it that way. And what the counselors are working on right now and what the principals at the elementaries are working on is making sure that we keep families together so that families are going to school on the same day.
Are laptops or iPads being provided so that kindergarten students can do distance learning on Fridays?
Laptops, it won't be laptops for kindergartners, it'll be iPads, and those will all be provided to do the distance learning.
Okay.
Great question. Great questions, everyone. Thank you. Okay, so how are services provided? And so IEP services, and we have to think of the content core instruction, and then we have to think of IEP services. And so IEP services will be delivered in person and during distance learning days, just like we talked about earlier. IEP service includes contact with service provider, either synchronously or asynchronously, and in the box on the right, it describes what those two mean, synchronous and asynchronous. And then the student worker activity and monitoring of progress. All of that happens for our services that are provided. So a case manager is constantly collecting data to see if your students are meeting their goals and objectives. And so they're monitoring that progress their time to see if we need to make changes in what we're doing. So if something is not working, or if a student is not showing up for a class, even if it's virtual, we have to figure out what do we need to do differently to engage your student to make sure that we can provide service in a meaningful way. And so we're counting on you as a parent to really be our partner in all of this, because we know that we can't do it alone. We know if the student is at home, we're not there with them to to make sure that their tasks are being completed, to make sure that they are on task to complete something, and that they have all of the directions, that they understood the directions to complete the task. And so we really are counting on you as a partner to support those IEP goals and objectives. Students with both IEPs and 504 plans will receive accommodations in each of the models. So if there is an accommodation for time, for example, if you are in distance learning, the Distance Learning Academy, or if you are working virtually and there is a student might need extended time to write a paper or an essay, that those same accommodations will still apply throughout. And we want to be sure that if that's not happening, that you are connecting with your case manager, because the sooner we can give information to content teachers or to special education teachers, the better we can redirect that process of receiving the instruction. And so I would suggest not hesitating to connect and say, this lesson didn't work very well, or we're going to need to be able to do something else to keep your student engaged. No, we've had this question several times, and so we wanted to make sure that we had it on the screen. And no district services are provided in person at a student's home. So a paraprofessional, for example, that supports your student at school perhaps, won't be sent to your home to support, but will be able to be available via technology. So if your student needs someone to be with them to support the learning that's taking place, either in core content or in specialized instruction, that will still be available as it was in school. If you're working with a speech pathologist, a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, we're not able to send those adults into the home just because of the social distancing components. But I know that some of them have suggested doing some very creative kinds of things, like driveway meetings to adjust equipment and to hand off different kinds of lessons. And we are going to try to make that work.
Related question, are existing case manager assignments remaining in place for non-academy students?
Okay, another great question. And so right now with the staffing, we are trying to figure out all of the pieces when, because we've had kids sign up for the Distance Learning Academy. Right now, we have about 310 students signed up into the District Learning Academy. So we're not able to hire separate staffing to to send teachers over to that distance learning academy, we have to do that from within because we have students that are leaving, so we have to have teachers available to go there as well. And so we are doing some shuffling. We hope that we don't have to do too much shuffling, but we also have staff that have accommodations, that they need accommodations as well for their health. And so we have teachers that are requesting, please let me work in the distance learning academy because I have this health condition that won't allow me to be in school. And so as much as we can, we are keeping case managers put, but we know that there will be some movement. I'll just say that right up front, simply because of licensure pieces. If we have a lot of students, perhaps with a learning disability in the Distance Learning Academy, we know that we're going to have to move a teacher who works with students with learning disabilities into the academy. So there may be some movement. Okay. And so then how are those services provided? I think we talked about this one already, Beth. Oh, sorry. I guess I missed the last line on that. The platforms that will be available for participation, and so for Parents Connection at Home, are Schoology and Seesaw. These are the same as we used in the spring. And there were some requests from middle and high school students to use Seesaw because Seesaw helps to push out lessons in a little bit more user-friendly way. And so we do have some teachers in middle and high school that will also be using Seesaw, but you will have all of this information provided to you. And if you need help with any of those platforms and how to do that, that was a piece of feedback that we received in the spring that that parents in our survey that we sent out, that parents really were looking for more support with the technology. And so we're very aware of that, and we want to provide that for you. Okay, this slide is a sample of the secondary hybrid base schedule. So we want to give you just an idea of what this could possibly look like. If you have a student that's in middle school or high school, you might see a schedule like this. So day one on site, let's call that A day. A student will have 3 class periods. So they might have class periods 1, 2, and 3. And so the first period may be social studies, the second period may be an elective or an allied art, and then the third period in blue, it may be the student may need a transition practice or some kind of a skills lesson. So whether that be social skills or job skills related, might be in that third block. And so on day 2, then, the second day that same student is in school, you'll have periods 4, 5, and 6. So 4 might be the science class, 5 might be the math class, and 6 may be an LA class, a pull-out LA class. Now, this isn't for every student. This is simply for an example of what it could look like. And so what we decided that we would do, if we go to the next slide, is so in that you'll see at the bottom now how 3-1 and 3-2 and 6-1 and 6-2 in the blue again are divided into 2 periods. And those are, we call them skinnies. So we're taking one long period and dividing it into 2 skinnies, so that a student who needs more support, more service, has the opportunity to receive those services on site. And so this is just a really good, Beth Watkins helped put this together, and it's just a really good look at what a day on site would be like. And again, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not sure what my child needs. I don't know if they're in a pull-out language arts. That all will be decided at the IEP meeting when you get together with that case manager and the team to say, this is what we think your child would benefit from. And so this is what the schedule we're going to set up. So you don't have to worry right now at this moment that I don't know what that schedule looks like. None of us do right now. They're designing, the guidance counselors at the secondaries are working madly around the clock to revamp the entire master schedule so that we can get it into this block schedule. And so we probably won't know a whole lot about what the schedules look like exactly. The earliest that we would know is probably by the middle of next week.
Carol, related question to the hybrid model. Will the 3 classes that take place in person always be the same, and then the other 3 classes always be distance learning days? For example, LA, math, and science always Mondays, and Wednesday, the social, Spanish, and specials distance learning days.
You want to take that one, Beth?
I'd be glad to. I don't have my mic on. Can I just
Okay,
buy you
yeah.
a second?
Come on over here. I'm gonna let Beth answer that question. She's worked hard on this schedule.
I hope I understand the question. It seems to have 2 parts. On day 1, you would have, let's call day 1 Monday. The student is attending on Monday and Wednesday. So on Monday, they would have the 3 classes that you mentioned. I don't remember which 3 they were. Shannon, which did we mention?
For example, LA, math, and science, always Mondays.
Yes, so always Monday, that would be LA Math and Science. And then always Tuesday would be LA Math and Science, synchronous, chance to connect with those teachers as well. So the support would continue into that next day at home. On Wednesday, it would always be the remaining 3 classes, whatever they would be according to your student schedule, with the opportunity the following day, in this case Thursday, for them to get the support for those 3 classes continuing at home and be able to connect for the beginning part of that class synchronously, just to check in with the teacher, get some instruction and encouragement for the day, and then perhaps move into more a guided work time following that. Did that answer the question? Okay. Thank
You want
you.
to answer this one too?
I will-
For secondary, so our distance learning days all synchronous?
For secondary students, our distance learning days all synchronous except for Fridays? That is a good question because it seems to imply that perhaps you would have a full day sitting in front of a computer on a home day. And it's not meant to imply that. It is meant to imply that you would have the opportunity to check in with each of those teachers for a portion of that class to be synchronous, because that is a large chunk of a class now with only 3 in a day. Those are longer classes. Those are almost double length. So you would have, on the second day, you wouldn't be synchronously connected for that entire class period, just perhaps for the beginning part of it.
Next question. How soon should we expect to hear from our case managers?
Another great question. And so case managers are going to be starting probably next week. We have supplied them with some extra time in order to write IEPs and to redo these schedules. They have to be, I know some of you may have heard from some of them already because you reach out to them often, but we really have to be on top of this if we want all of our IEPs and transportation and all of the accommodations and modifications set up prior to the school year. So you can look to have them connecting with you over the next week.
We do have a question about masks. I believe we're covering that in one of the next slides, so I'll wait to ask it until after you cover that slide.
Okay.
That's the next one.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so personal protective equipment for both staff and students, or PPE as we call it. We're following all of the guidelines from the Minnesota Department of Health and MDE about recommended PPE for staff. We have an entire table that outlines where we need to be providing PPE and which PPE and how do we use that PPE. And so we know that we have all of those things in place already, which I'm really happy about. We have all of our things ordered. We have them here in front of us. And so I'm feeling really good about that. And so for every activity of daily living, for every nursing protocol, for whether it be feeding or using the restroom or hand-over-hand contact for students, all of those different things require a certain level of this PPE, which we will be training staff on and we will be teaching students about, because that's going to look different from home than it does at school. Because at school, we really have to protect both our staff and our students, and they're not with family members typically when they're at school. And so we really have to do that teaching around that PPE to make sure that students can do that, and staff will be trained on what they need in each circumstance around PPE too. And so all students are required to wear face masks, and the needs of the student. So this is one more item at that IEP meeting, why it's so important to participate in that, because we have to make a determination, is the student able to wear the mask or not, or do they need a shield or not? We are looking at the majority of the students. There will be very few accommodations made for not wearing a mask. We know that there will be some, obviously, but even in speaking with our partners in CentraCare and talking with their physicians to make sure that we are writing policies that are appropriate for mask wearing, their feedback too was that they are they will write very few exemptions for students not wearing masks. And so again, that will be covered on a student by student basis and talked about what that's going to look like throughout a student's day.
The question is, will children with special needs who can't or won't keep a mask on be kept socially distanced or receive most instruction in a non-integrated room or with a case manager?
Yeah, a really good question. And so if a student is not willing to wear a mask, so I think that we have, there's a couple of different pieces there. Are they not willing because they're not able, or are they just not willing because they don't want to? If a student is not willing because they just simply don't want to, we're going to ask that the student participate in the Distance Learning Academy. If the student is not able to because they physically cannot able to, because there's a health need that doesn't allow them to mask, or there is some learning that has to take place regarding the mask, or some sensory issues, then we're going to, we're going to teach that student. That's always our first goal. We have to teach them, and we have to practice, and we have to build their stamina in order for them to wear masks or shields. Because if students have been at home a lot, they're probably not wearing a mask often if they are inside their house. We know that they have to wear a mask or a shield outside right now in the public, but that may not be as often as we think. So in school, the expectation would be that they would be wearing that mask and or shield for the majority of the day, but we also know that we have to build their stamina around that.
Carol, we have a few more questions that are somewhat related. I'll try to summarize them as maybe one question, but there's questions about Friday, and both for kindergarten and for secondary students. Do you know if Fridays are going to require synchronous learning?
Say it one more time, Shannon.
Do you know if Fridays are going to require synchronous learning at any age level? Kindergarten, middle school, elementary, high school?
Yeah, on Fridays, on the flex day, there is not a, there's no set standard for providing that synchronous learning. Teachers do know, though, that if they are going to be meeting with students that need extra support, most often it works best if they have them on screen to talk through that. But there's not a requirement for it to be synchronous learning on Fridays. That's a good question. I'm seeing a couple more, Shannon. While you get those together, maybe I'll just answer about the masks. Who provides the masks? And so every student will be provided 2 masks here at school that the district will be providing, and every staff member will get a mask as well and a shield. And if a student requires something specific, so a certain kind of mask or a mask with a clear opening in order to that we can read their lips, or the staff member might need something like that, we will be providing that. And again, all of that discussed at the IEP meeting to say, what does PPE look like for the student? Because we know that in some instances, there may be instances of paper gowns that need to be used. And so we really want to get that in place to make sure that we keep every student safe. That's our job.
Carol, a couple more questions about case managers, mostly just wondering, how will we know who our child's case manager is? Will they be calling us?
Yes, the case managers will be calling you or emailing you or texting you, whatever is the best method for them to connect with you. Most of the case managers you've probably had experience with already. And so they will be reaching out to you in the best mode that they know how to get a hold of you.
Beginning on August 31st, right, is when teachers are back?
Yeah, no, it'll be before that.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be before that. It'll be over the next couple of weeks because we have to be writing those IEPs.
Okay. Service question. How will DAPE services look in regards to the DLA?
Yeah. So we had an amazing experience with DAPE during our extended school year during the summer. And what we asked our DAPE teachers to do in the summer is stretch themselves and come up with activities where they could be on synchronously with a group of kids and set up an activity for them that they could be doing in their home. And so they did that, and we had very good feedback on that. And so I'm going to make the assumption that we are going to plan to do that again in the Distance Learning Academy so we can have kids really experience activity. Great question.
Do you know what goal setting conferences will look like in the elementaries?
I do not know exactly what goal setting conferences will look like in the elementary right now. I do know that they are about an hour in length, but I'm not sure what that schedule looks like or how they are being set up at this time.
Carol, another mask question. Will those not wearing masks be kept away from the rest of the student body?
Yeah, and this is a really great question. And so students will not necessarily be kept away from the rest of the student body if they're not wearing a mask. But again, we're going to have to make really clear plans about if that student is masked, when they are masked, what that looks like, and who they are around, both staff and students. Because as we know, through respiratory airborne droplets, that COVID can spread rapidly. So we really, really want to keep our kids and our staff safe. And so we're going to have to make some really tough decisions sometimes to say, where is that student going to be function the best, and where are they going to be the safest? And so sometimes that may mean not being in a large science class with other students, but we'll look at that on case-by-case basis to determine what exactly that will look like.
One other mask question. So if they can't wear masks, do they need a physician's note?
So if a student is, it does not have documented need in which they couldn't wear a mask. So for example, we do a 3-year reevaluation, and in that evaluation, it may say, student has significant sensory needs, cannot wear anything on their head or their face. If we have that documented already, the student would not need a doctor's note in order to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, physicians are reluctant at this point to write notes to say a student doesn't have to wear a mask just because of protecting everybody else from the spread of COVID. But for example, I'll give you another example. So let's say that a student has a ventilator, and we have students with ventilators that it would be very apparent, and it would be documented in that evaluation report and in that IEP that a student wouldn't be able to wear a mask. So it wouldn't become And again, the IEP team would have to talk about this, but it wouldn't be simply a decision of, I just don't feel like wearing a mask. That we won't be able to have in school. That won't work. And I would encourage you highly, if you feel like that is going to be the case, that you sign your student up for the district learning academy in that case. There's a question, so each student gets 2 masks per day? No, this isn't 2 masks per day. The students will get 2 masks, and if those become soiled for any reason, and well, one is a cotton mask, 2 are paper masks, disposable masks. So the cotton mask can be washed and reused, and so they won't get 2 masks per day, no.
Carol, a question about classrooms. Will the students remain in the same room throughout the day during instruction times, or will they change location?
Great question. So students will be transitioning. Well, let me clarify that. Elementary students, as much as possible, will remain in their classroom. Now, they too have such things as music class and art class and Phi Ed, and they'll go out for recess. And so there will be transition times. So students will not stay in one classroom all day long unless their services are such that they are in special ed services all day long. And then I don't know that they would stay in one classroom. They might be switched services, but we're trying to reduce transitions as much as possible so that we are not passing COVID in the hallways, passing germs in the hallways, and just reducing traffic flow too, so we're not touching or getting things dirty, if you will, door handles and walls and everything else. So transitions will be reduced.
Will kids who have a difficult time sitting in the same spot for too long be allowed breaks in different in-school locations?
So we are still working out all of the spacing pieces based on the master schedules that are being created. We know that due to social distancing, we're having to use classroom spaces that we haven't used before. And so we will be doing as much social distancing as possible. The governor's order says 50% capacity. We have had an architect working to determine how many kids can be in a classroom at one time. So we know that students, especially the block schedule at middle and secondary, for them to partake in an hour and 20-minute class might be something that they are not used to. Many of our students are not used to sitting for those periods. And so we will build in breaks into the instruction. I cannot guarantee that it'll be a break in a different room, because I'm not sure that we have the space right now to do that. But kids, if they need breaks, they will have that available to them. And like I said, the spaces are still being worked out.
A question about what would count as a need. So what would count as a need for a 3-6 kiddo attending 4 days? What might that look like?
So a need. So let's say that they have speech services and instruction in math and instruction in literacy. So they have a high level of services that they would need that couldn't be met in 2 days. That student may be someone who is required 4 days. Someone who may have extreme organizational skills that are needed, that might be someone who may need to come 4 days. Someone who is blind, visually impaired and gets orientation and mobility with a white cane, that may be someone. But I don't want to quantify that list or qualify that list with just those needs. Those are just some examples, and I think that it's just worth a really good discussion with that IEP team to see how those needs can be met. And if we can meet the needs at home, so in my speech language example, if we can do 2 days of speech language at school, and we can then do virtual speech language on the other 2 days, the need is being met. And so that wouldn't necessarily mean they have to be in school for 4 days. If there's a method of, for example, in the organizational one that I was mentioning, if there's a way for us to help a student organize themselves virtually, we certainly don't have to have them in school for 4 days to help them to organize. I know that having students home is a challenge, and we all know that having kids in school is the best place for them to be. However, given the circumstances that we are dealing with, we will need to be really creative in meeting those services so that we can keep every student and every staff member safe. And so for some students, it means 4 days. For others, it means 2 days.
Carol, some questions about before and after school programming, such as Tiger Club. How early could kids be dropped off in the morning before school, or those before school programs? Are you aware of those times yet?
Oh, you know what? I am not aware of those times yet, but we will take that question down. And was there a name on there, Shannon, that we could get that?
We've got a couple of different ones, but I believe each school would know if they're going to be housing before school.
Yeah.
Like Tiger Club is specific to South Junior High, I believe, so, or maybe even Clearview. I think there's a couple of them. I think each school's principal would be able to tell you at this time if they're going to be offering their before school programs for drop off. So I would check there first.
Okay. I'll just repeat that in case you didn't hear that. So best place to check, Shannon says, is to call your school principal, and they can let you know the before school and after school care.
I believe.
Any other questions?
I believe, as I'm looking through here, that we did get to all the questions. Are there any further questions for the chat?
Are there any further questions for the chat that you may have?
Will half days for kids who struggle with face coverings be more acceptable, assuming we provide transportation for the unusual dismissal and arrival time?
Mm-hmm. And that very well may be an option. And so again, great creative thinking. I like that a lot. And our job is to build that stamina for kids so that they can wear masks. And maybe if you're feeling that, a half day would be more appropriate, that we certainly can start there and work our way up. But I shouldn't say but, and at that IEP meeting that you will have is a great place to bring up that conversation.
Do we know, Carol, how recovery school will be structured?
I do not know how recovery school will be structured. Kaden, can you say a little bit more about that? As far as, were you wondering about a time? And I'm assuming you're talking about the recovery school at McKinley.
Class schedules and distance considerations.
At McKinley. And so same holds true for McKinley, is that you have the distance learning option if you prefer to do it that way. The recovery school, I don't know exactly what they will set up or how those lessons, the instruction in particular, will be set up. But the hybrid model is the same. It would be 2 days in person and 2 to 3 days virtual. And so I want to just reiterate that that would be the same, holds true for McKinley. But you certainly have the Distance Learning Academy option for students who attend McKinley and recovery school too.
We have a question. Do we have a list of resources where students may be able to go for distance learning days for the hybrid for grades 3 through 5 for parents who work? And then another person, thank you, Amanda, noted that YMCA is providing care to help on days of distance learning.
And the Boys and Girls Clubs as well is providing care on those days. And so that would be something you could reach out to as well to find out how they could support you. They're a great partner of ours, and they often provide the Kids Stop programs after school, but they're going to do full days now. Any other questions?
Yep. Will 504s be done before school? I know you said IEPs will try to be done. I didn't hear 504.
Yes, our 504 coordinators are also busy doing that. So it's usually our guidance counselors at our schools that are the 504 coordinators. And you may have met with them in the past, so you'll know who that is. If you don't know who that is, you can certainly call the school and they can tell you exactly who that 504 manager or coordinator is. And the expectation from us is that those will be completed before school starts as well.
We have my grandson is waiting to be seen for an add-on, so we are not sure if he will get in before school starts, and he needs a program for dyslexia. What will happen with dyslexia?
Okay, so dyslexia, I'm glad you asked that one. Dyslexia, we are providing our support for dyslexia this year, just like we have in the past. And this year, we're really lucky. We have our new Orton Gillingham type resource. It's called Sunday. And the Sunday curriculum will be introduced in all grade 1 this year. And then any students that fall out of grade 1 will still be receiving their intervention in Sunday for dyslexia.
It says, my daughter was previously in a social skills class. Will that be one of her classes for DLA, or will she only have the main classes as all the other DLA students?
Oh, so all services and social skills would be one of those classes. All of those services will be provided in the Distance Learning Academy as well as in the hybrid model. So if there's a social skills class on that IEP right now, that will be discussed at that IEP meeting, and they will determine how that will be vended through the Distance Learning Academy. Great question.
Carol, the dyslexia question was specific to a child in 7th grade. And just to note, we do provide Sunday and intervention for dyslexia characteristics in our middle schools as well. So those services are also provided, whether you're on an IEP, a 504, or for general education students. So that will be available to students who need it. How will hearing impairment students and masks work?
And so in that situation, the student is asked to wear a clear shield versus a mask, as well as the teacher, because we know that you have to have facial expressions. And so we will be providing all of that PPE for students with hearing impairment.
Carol, I want to note it is 5:58. We have time for one more question.
Any last questions before we sign off?
Will DLA schedules be available asynchronous due to children needing several breaks throughout the day?
The Distance Learning Academy, yes, will be a combination of synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. And so there will be breaks built in throughout the day, for sure. Great question. I'll take this last one. Are shields going to be allowed in place of masks? The shields are only allowed in place of masks if there is a need in that area. All students will be required to wear a mask unless there is something like the deaf, hard of hearing situation that we just talked about.
And the last question, is this posted online? Or will this be?
Yes, this presentation will be posted online. We're recording it and it'll be posted as soon as we are finished. You're welcome for it. So I want to just say a big, big thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to emphasize again, you are our best partners and we just need you greatly to make this a big success. And we're really looking forward to it. Each day we get a little bit closer to figuring this all out. And I won't say that we have it all figured out yet because I know that we don't. But we're getting closer, and if you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to respond and help you to figure something out. So I look forward to seeing you. Your case managers look forward to seeing you. Your special education supervisors look forward to seeing you. And we are going to get rolling soon. So take good care, everyone. Stay safe.